summer of 1995. For many people, the Bulls dynasty had come to an end. Michael Jordan's anticipated return turned into a premature disappointment. After playing only 17 games during the 1994-1995 regular season, the Orlando Magic spoiled the party in the playoffs for the man many people already considered to be the best player of his entire generation. A young and dynamic team that threatened to establish a new era that would leave the Bulls forgotten forever. Michael Jordan only had one chance to save his legacy, to stop being the best player of his generation and become the best player of all time. Because exactly 1 year later, Chicago had the chance to take revenge. Now, it wouldn't be easy. The Magic had an unbeatable weapon. Shaquille O'Neal was nothing like any player Jordan had faced before. At just 23 years old, he was already one of the most dominant superstars in the entire league, a brute force capable of destroying any defense. Many people thought that Michael Jordan had no answer for him, but in the end, they were wrong. It was 1995 when Michael finally regained his hunger, when he finally regained his ambition. After getting over the tragic death of his father and giving baseball a chance, he realized that his passion had always been basketball. When he retired, it was partly because he didn't feel the competition. His success was so overwhelming that he felt no one could motivate him enough to demonstrate his obvious dominance again. However, the NBA was changing very quickly, and the younger guys weren't afraid of Jordan like the veterans were. I mean, it's hard to say that anything could intimidate Shaq. He had already led the NBA in scoring during Michael's absence, and he knew that the Chicago Bulls didn't have a center who was capable of stopping him in one-on-one. Although the reality is that there probably wasn't a center like that in the whole league. Shaq, together with Penny Hardaway, had led Orlando to win 60 games that season. They were a dynamic duo that complemented each other perfectly. And not only that, like the year before, they had qualified for the conference finals with incredible ease. Joe Dumars' Pistons and a young Grant Hill, one of the sensations of the league at that time, were unable to win a single game against the Magic in the first round. And Steve Smith, Mookie Blaylock, and Christian Laettner's Atlanta Hawks could only win one of the 5 games they played. With a record of 7 wins and 1 loss, Orlando was more than ready to face the Bulls in a conference finals that promised to be incredibly attractive for all spectators and basketball fans. But the Bulls, they had the DNA of champions. Yes, they had aged since they achieved the three-peat before Michael's retirement, but they had also acquired other pieces such as Dennis Rodman, who, although also a veteran, would be a warrior that no one would want to face. Now, after that disastrous elimination in the 1995 playoffs, the Bulls had done their homework. How? Well, by having the best regular season in NBA history, 72-10, an unimaginable record in any era. The Bulls were incredibly strong in every aspect. They had the best defense and the best offense in the league in advanced statistics, and that helped them cruise through the Eastern Conference playoffs. The Miami Heat couldn't beat them in a single game in the first round, and Patrick Ewing and John Starks' New York Knicks only managed to scrape a win in the second round. Chicago came into the conference finals with an identical 7-1 record, and no one, absolutely no one, was willing to miss it. Despite the incredible performances of Penny Hardaway and Shaquille O'Neal in the first 2 games, the Bulls completely dominated. In Game 1, they won by 38 points, giving a masterclass in the relentless two-way game that Chicago was capable of executing onto perfection. And in Game 2, although it was much more competitive, the 36 points and 16 rebounds that Shaquille O'Neal got were insufficient for Orlando to regain the home court advantage. Michael's 35 points that night were simply too much. The dynamic didn't change in Game 3, in which the Bulls won in Florida by a 19-point margin, thanks to Scottie Pippen's best performance in the series. However, it would be in the decisive Game 4 that we would see one of the best performances of Jordan's career. When the legs of the Bulls players were weighing heaviest, he showed the strength of character to claim his revenge. Because on May 27, 1996, in an Orlando arena packed with people who still had faith in their team's slim chances, Michael Jordan, with the red Air Jordan 11 on his feet, which, by the way, became iconic thanks to this performance, gave a masterclass for the ages. In the first play of the game, Michael already made a statement, because he knocked down his first jumper in Shaq's face after receiving it from mid-range. "Hey kid, I'm here, and I'm back." Although right after, we saw the perfect example of why Shaq was unstoppable. Look at the foul Ron Harper commits to send him to the free throw line. On the other side of the court, Michael continued to wreak havoc on the Magic's defense, as he had done throughout the series, pushing them from the mid-range or in transition when the opportunity arose, taking advantage of the fact that Shaq was slow to make the defensive transition. However, the Magic, also led by Penny Hardaway and his explosiveness, were dominating the first quarter. Not even Mike's wide range that night, which scored a 3 in the first quarter, could cope with their offensive potential. Although seconds later, Jordan knocked down yet another difficult midi for a perfect 5-on-5 of field goals in the first quarter. Orlando's defensive intensity and their continuous traps and high pressures allowed them to go into the second quarter with an 8-point advantage. Although it was practically impossible for them to equalize the series, they knew that the more time that passed, the stronger their youth would become against the age of the Bulls members. But Jordan didn't want to let that happen. From the low block, he was totally unguardable. And when the defense overreacted, he found the open man. If Pippen missed, he was there for the offensive rebound. Mike was doing everything, to the point that the Magic players had to play at the limit of the rules to contain him. When the Bulls were in trouble, as in this play, in which they're coming from missing 8 of the last 9 field goals, they gave the rock to their superhero, to their messiah, and he found a look or an open man. In addition to using the transition repeatedly, something that didn't really fit in with the philosophy of a Bulls team that loved the half-court offense, Michael was able to match the incredible energy of an Orlando Magic team that was completely tireless. And after the disaster of the first quarter, Chicago managed to lose the second quarter by just 1 point. In what was an efficient night for Jordan, the Bulls could find no other answer. Despite the superstar's attempts to involve his teammates in the offense, it wasn't working. And the halftime difference was 9 points. Today, that might be a comebackable difference, but in the 90s, that was a considerable margin. If Michael wanted to close out the series that night, he would have to step up even more. But if he didn't, that loss could give the Orlando Magic wings. Since the Bulls' teamwork wasn't working properly that night, Jordan started using his fearsome ISO at the beginning of the third quarter. And the Bulls began to use strong traps and high pressure to try to get those extra possessions that would mean extra points for the best player in the world. A plan without weaknesses, right? Well, Shaq didn't care much about that, because if one ball got to the low post, it was clear what was going to happen after. Jordan and Shaq, each with their own style, were unstoppable in the low block. Although it's obvious that they were unstoppable in completely different ways. The difference was that MJ also had other skills. Look how easily he drills the catch-and-shoot 3 for his 30th point of the night. His range was already increasing at that point in his career. But man, when things went wrong, he was back to his spot. Michael was knocking down fadeaways from the post even while getting fouled. A few moments later, exactly the same situation. MJ receives at the low post and makes another fadeaway over Penny Hardaway. A shot that seemed to mean much more than 2 points. Because Jordan, facing one of the best guards of the new school, wanted to make a statement. From time to time, he continued to generate looks for his teammates, as in this play in which he found Steve Kerr to sink a highly difficult three-pointer. But with a good run, the Chicago Bulls managed to win the third quarter by 28 points to 18. They had not only managed to close the gap during this period, but with just 12 minutes left to play, Michael had put his team ahead. After the surprising elimination they had suffered against the Magic 12 months earlier, Jordan was already savoring a sweet taste of revenge. And you know that the closer you get to the final buzzer, the more superhuman he was capable of becoming. Only a few moments had passed since the start of the fourth quarter, when MJ decided to give another masterclass against Penny Hardaway from the low block. Left or right, it didn't matter. He would find a way to create enough space to shoot over his defender. Thanks to handoff screens, sometimes his teammates were able to create this space for him too, as in this play, in which Pippen executes this concept to perfection for Michael to score his 39th point of the game. But seconds later, he sinks a 3 that allows the Bulls to take a 13-point lead with only 4 minutes remaining. This last run by Chicago seems devastating for an Orlando Magic team that was unable to withstand the pressure. Not even with their fans cheering them on. Even though the game was close to ending with a comfortable lead, Michael continued to put his body on the line in every play, going to the hoop even if Shaquille O'Neal was waiting for him underneath. And with a shot very similar to the one Kobe scored in his farewell game against the Utah Jazz in 2016, Michael drilled the dagger over Brooks Thompson that decided the game, and also the series. That Game 4 not only served to prove Michael's enormous dominance, but it also helped the Bulls get that burden off their shoulders. The previous 365 days had served to set a goal that what happened in the 1995 playoffs would not be repeated. That is the real reason for the Bulls' historic regular season in 1996. And that is the reason why Michael Jordan managed to wipe the Orlando Magic off the map for more than a decade. But why? Because Shaquille O'Neal realized that Michael was unbeatable. Simply unbeatable. It didn't matter the philosophy, the tactics, or the strength. The Bulls were simply unbeatable. And that's the reason why a few weeks later, in July 1996, he signed his free agent contract to play for the Los Angeles Lakers. A decision that plunged the Magic into an ocean of mediocrity from which they were unable to escape until the Dwight Howard era. Michael didn't just reclaim his throne, he destroyed the team that tried to replace him. The Magic embarrassed him in 95, but in 96, MJ came back stronger, swept them, and ended their future. Shaq left. Penny never won again. The Bulls dominated. But here's the question. Was this the greatest revenge story in NBA history? Or was it Jordan's 93 finals versus Barkley? LeBron's 2016 comeback? Kobe's redemption in 2009? Drop your pick in the comments and let's settle this debate once and for all. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like, subscribe, and hit on the notification bell to stay updated with all our latest content. Thanks for watching, and catch you in the next one.